Why? The relationship of women to video games has always been strained, but for fuck's sake, Battlefield as a franchise is already towing the line with the gaming community due to their last few releases, and DICE and EA were already under fire from their last release, Battlefront 2, but the Battlefield community has always seemed particularly devoted. Their response to Battlefield 5, however, specifically relating to the female presence in the game, has been distinctly toxic. Battlefield 5 is a game that takes place during World War II, and the present shitstorm surrounds images like this. DICE announced that female player characters would be a larger part of this game, and DICE had already received some flack during their last Battlefield release, Battlefield 1, which included a number of female and black characters, which many considered to be too historically inaccurate to be in a World War I game. Well, obviously this next step toward equal representation was much larger, and the response increased to match it. I'm not suggesting that this is the most obscene example of this mindset by any means. In fact, considering recent events, the fanbase's response to this announcement was relatively tame. But that doesn't make it any more excusable, and brings to light once more the severe issue regarding sexism and misogyny in gaming culture. The most obscene example, if I had to pick one, would probably be Gamergate from 2016, but I'll return to that in a little bit. First, I'd like to talk about the history of this perspective. To help with the dissection of this trend, not only in gaming culture, but programming culture as a whole, I'll be turning to Aubrey Anable. Anable is a film studies professor who pushes to include new mediums to follow the same analytical study that film does.
My name is Aubrey Anable. I'm a professor in the film studies department, and my main areas of research are digital media, experimental digital film and cinema, and video games.
According to Anable, women have been consistently erased from the history of computers. Effectively, the popular dialogue is that women simply don't belong in the position at all. To the present state of affairs surrounding women in games, as both players and producers, Anable turns to Gamergate, saying, "Our contemporary moment of misogynistic attacks on women in gaming culture, brought to a wider attention through Gamergate, is directly related to the way women have figured into the history of the computer industry." And the question that I consistently ask in these situations, I will restate: why? Especially considering the statistic that gets thrown around so consistently that women make up almost half of the gaming market and have for nearly the past decade. So I did a small amount of research on the issue, and I found a fairly obvious answer. The ESA, who helped popularize this statistic, are being somewhat unintentionally misleading. The statistic they released is supposed to be far too broad. The idea is that they polled a wide audience, including people who've played a game even once, and included the mobile and Facebook game markets, meaning the results were skewed by things like Farmville and Words with Friends, which, while interesting, does not answer the culture surrounding things like Overwatch, Call of Duty, and Battlefield 5, and why they're such toxic environments. So I turned to a poll conducted by Quantic Foundry. Instead of a broad survey, their data comes from a self-selected survey, meaning that a person would likely have to be a gamer already in order to want to participate in a survey about gaming, and their findings are obviously significantly different. The fact that they also focus more on the distribution between genre helps to understand why these communities in AAA FPS games are so incredibly toxic. The variance is incredibly severe between almost 70% representation in puzzle and simulation games to the 7% we see in FPS titles. So, while this does explain the toxicity of these specific genres, it's important to note that this isn't at all to dismiss the ESA's findings. There's obviously a unilateral interest in video games, and these indie genres offer a lot to analyze, as Anable notes. The only conclusion from there is probably best stated by her.
I think that a lot of the negativity that comes up around gaming culture as being violent, racist, misogynist, etc., comes about looking at a very narrow category, and so I'm again really interested in this kind of expansive idea of what video games are and what video game culture is.